If you love Bridgerton, you will love this painting, because here we see a society mama with her two daughters who went on to become very, very popular debutantes. They were the diamonds of their season. So at the centre, the society mama was called Elizabeth. She was Lady Stuart de Rothesay. And behind her stand her two daughters. We have Charlotte, who was born in 1817, and then we have Louisa, who was born the following year in 1818. Their father was this man here. He was called Charles, and he was the first Baron Stuart de Rothesay, and he was appointed ambassador to France. Because their father was the ambassador to France, both daughters were born in Paris, and they were raised in Paris too. And here we can see another beautiful painting with them playing at the piano. As you've seen in Bridgerton, playing the pianoforte was considered a very elegant accomplishment for young ladies. So here we see Charlotte seated at the piano, whilst her sister Louisa is turning the page for her, whilst also holding the harp, indicating that they could also play the harp. In 1831, the family returned to England. 3 years after they returned to England, the eldest, so that's Charlotte there, she was presented, she came out, and she was indeed considered one of the most attractive debutantes of the season. And during her first season out, she secured a match. The Honourable Charles Canning, who was the son of a former Prime Minister, proposed to her, and she accepted. She was married at the age of 18 the following year. A few years later, Charlotte was appointed as one of Queen Victoria's ladies of the bedchamber, and she went on to become a favourite of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. Unfortunately, her marriage was not a great success. She and her husband didn't really get on, and they also didn't have any children, which was a source of great sorrow for them both. However, in terms of rank and title, they did do well. So in 1837, her husband succeeded to the Viscountcy of Canning, and then in 1859, he was elevated to an earldom. So she became Countess Canning. But what of her younger sister, Louisa? When Louisa was presented at court and came out in society, she was also considered to do very well. She secured a match very quickly, and she actually outdid her sister, marrying a marquess. So that's higher than an earl. But lower than a duke. And she was married in 1842, and then she became Marchioness of Waterford. The new Marchioness was apparently a very talented artist. Louisa and her sister had both received art tutoring from a very young age, and she achieved quite good proficiency. She sat within the circle of the pre-Raphaelites during the 1850s, and she regularly painted a whole range of scenes. She was a gifted watercolour painter, and indeed the National Portrait Gallery in London has over 75 of her portraits. She also painted biblical scenes and pretty much anything that took her fancy. She was also a great philanthropist, and she spent much time and money helping the people on her husband's estates. For example, she designed and built a school, and she decorated it with her artwork, and she also built 2 chapels. Interestingly, this marriage also did not produce any children. However, unlike her sister's slightly tepid marriage, she and her husband were extremely happy together. They shared similar interests, and they both were devoted to improving their estates and helping the welfare of their people. However, the marriage was cut tragically short because in 1859, her husband fell from his horse during a hunting trip. He died from his injuries, and poor Louisa was grief-stricken. Louisa outlived him by many decades. She died at the age of 73 in 1891. She had also outlived her elder sister, Charlotte, who had died 30 years before her, aged only 44.